Picture a mansion with 110 rooms, a palace filled with Rembrandt and Vermeer. A home so magnificent it rivaled anything in Europe. Now, picture it abandoned, rotting, windows shattered, ceilings collapsed, graffiti covering marble walls that once displayed priceless art. This is Linwood Hall. And this is the story of how one of America's greatest mansions went from unimaginable luxury to complete ruin in less than a century. It's a story about wealth that couldn't protect against tragedy, about a single night in 1912 that destroyed a dynasty, about how quickly everything, no matter how grand, how expensive, how carefully built, can fall apart. This isn't just about a building. It's about the people who lived there, the family that had everything and lost it all, the dream that became a nightmare. So settle in, because what you're about to hear is one of the most tragic stories in American architectural history. And before we begin, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What fascinates you most about these Gilded Age mansions? Have any of you actually seen Linwood Hall in person? Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoy these deep dives into forgotten American history, please hit the like button and subscribe. Your support helps me continue creating these documentaries and bringing these incredible stories to life. It means more than you know. Now, let's go back to 1897, when Linwood Hall first opened its doors. The palace that rivaled kings. In the wealthy Philadelphia suburb of Elkins Park, behind rusting iron gates and overgrown gardens, stands a ghost. Not the transparent kind from children's stories, but something far more haunting. A palace built to last forever that's been dying for 70 years. Linwood Hall. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone. Most Americans haven't. But in 1897, when its doors first opened, this mansion was as famous as any building in the country. A 10-room spanning 70,000 square ft, built in the style of a French chateau, but scaled to American ambitions, which meant bigger, grander, more expensive than anything the French had ever imagined. To understand what Linwood Hall represented, you need to picture the Gilded Age at its absolute peak. This was 1897, when America's industrial titans were richer than kings, when fortunes were counted in the tens of millions, billions in today's money. And when showing off that wealth wasn't considered vulgar, it was expected. Carnegie had his castle in Scotland, Vanderbilt had built more in North Carolina, and Peter A.B. Widner, he built his own Versailles right outside Philadelphia. The numbers alone stagger the imagination. 110 rooms, but not the kind of rooms you and I live in. These were rooms with 20th ceilings, walls covered in silk damask imported from France, floors laid with rare marble from Italy. The grand staircase, carved from a single massive piece of marble, rose 3 stories and was wide enough that 10 people could walk up it side by side. The ballroom could host 300 guests for dinner and still have room for an orchestra and dancing afterward. 62 bathrooms. In 1897, when most Americans were still using outuses, Peter Widner's house had 62 bathrooms with hot and cold running water, porcelain fixtures, and heated towel racks. There was a swimming pool indoors naturally with elaborate tile work that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. A bowling alley, a gymnasium, a theater where the family could watch private performances. But the real extravagance wasn't in the plumbing or the marble. It was in what hung on the walls. Peter Widner was one of the greatest art collectors in American history, and Linwood Hall was built to house his treasures, Rembrandt paintings, works by Vermeer, Van Dyck, Raphael, Donatello, not reproductions, originals. A single gallery room in Linwood held more artistic value than most museums in America possessed. The house itself was designed by Horace Trumbauer, a Philadelphia architect who was only 27 years old when Widner commissioned him. Trumbauer was brilliant, ambitious, and he understood what his client wanted. Not just a house, but a statement. Linwood Hall would announce to the world that Peter Widner had arrived, that he was the equal of any European nobleman, that American money could buy anything European culture had created, and do it better. The architecture was neoclassical. Think columns, symmetry, perfect proportions borrowed from ancient Greece and Rome by way of French palatial design. The exterior was Indiana limestone, the same stone used for many of America's greatest buildings. It glowed golden in sunlight and could last 1,000 years if maintained. That was the idea. This house was built for eternity. The grounds matched the house's ambition, formal gardens designed by a landscape architect who'd studied in France, fountains, sculptures, a carriage house that was itself larger than most American homes, staff quarters that housed dozens of servants in condition. Seats in those carriages proved surprisingly cozy for the time period. Despite his shortcomings, Widner looked after his employees decently. Once Linwood Hall stood finished, Philadelphia's elite were stunned. The extravagance reached levels that almost defied American norms. Sure, the Gilded Age thrived on flaunting riches, but this seemed on another plane. It resembled European nobility uprooted to Pennsylvania soil. Construction expenses ran between $8 and $10 million, roughly $300 million in modern terms, and that excluded the artwork Widner later added, valued at tens of millions extra. Detractors labeled it showy, vulgar, a symbol of avarice. Yet they flocked to see it regardless, captivated by Widner's achievement. Far from a garish parade of fresh wealth, this embodied true splendor crafted with flawless discernment and boundless funds. No aspect fell short. Each space formed its own work of art. At 53, Peter Widner surveyed his finished estate, enveloped in elegance that might have envious Versailles' Sun King. He fully anticipated his descendants filling those halls for centuries. His boys thrived as entrepreneurs. His grandkids grew up amid luxury. The Widner legacy promised longevity, with Linwood Hall as its shining emblem, an enduring mark of Yankee triumph. Little did he suspect that within 15 years, sorrow would devastate his kin, or that after 50 years, the mansion would lie deserted, or after 70 it would crumble in decay, scarred by vandals teetering on demolition, or that Widner would linger in memory not for this splendid residence, but via survivors listed among Titanic's lost souls. But let's not rush the tale. To grasp Linwood Hall's descent from majesty to wreckage, from glory to grief, one must know its architect. Peter Widner's saga captures the Gilded Age essence, cutthroat, ingenious, and profoundly poignant in the end. Peter A.B. Widner, the streetcar magnate, born in 1834 to Philadelphia's underclass, Peter Errol Brown Widner entered a world of scarcity. His dad laid bricks for a living, his mom mended clothes at home. They squeezed into a modest dwelling in a blue-collar district where scraping by defined daily life. At 13, Peter quit classes to ease the family's burden, starting as a messenger, then clerking at a meat counter. Hardly the launchpad for a future palace lord. Yet Peter possessed innate gifts no classroom could impart. He read people keenly and grasped finance intuitively. By 19, he'd scraped together funds for his own modest butcher outlet. Nothing lavish, just a neighborhood spot catering to laborers and their households. But it belonged to him. The Civil War then sparked his initial windfall. He landed a deal to provision beef for Union soldiers. Grimy labor it was, sourcing livestock, processing it, hauling cuts to campsites. Profitable nonetheless, and Peter operated with unyielding precision. War's close left him with ample funds to pivot from meat to broader ventures. His talent lay in spotting overlooked prospects. Through the 1870s, U.S. urban centers boomed, demanding better mobility. Horse-pulled trolleys linked districts, enabling sprawl past foot travel. Widner envisioned what lay ahead. Dominating trolleys meant dominating the metropolis. He snapped up Philadelphia routes, merged them, streamlined operations. As rivals dismissed streetcars as stale ventures, Widner forged a transit powerhouse. Electrification truly catapulted his fortune. As powered trolleys supplanted horse versions in the 1880s, Widner held ideal leverage. He owned the networks, he commanded upgrade resources, and through savvy contributions and discreet negotiations over years, he locked in advantageous city permits. Peter Widner transcended mere ownership of Philly's trolleys. He dictated the city's pulse. A clear-cut monopoly, it amassed him staggering wealth. He ventured further. Chicago trolleys, New York's overhead rails, Baltimore's lines. Booming cities nationwide craved his services, and he claimed stakes in them all. His tactics stayed bold. He acquired rivals, bankrupted holdouts, built cartels to sidestep rivalry. Gilded Age barons operated similarly, though it bred Widner foes aplenty. Laborers scorned his stingy pay, progressives decried his sway over officials, peers envied his grip. Widner shrugged it off. In truth, he knew the era's rule: conquer or crumble. Like Carnegie in steel or Rockefeller in petroleum, Widner ruled city travel. That's how commerce rolled then. Hand-wringing suited the sidelined. By the 1890s, Peter Widner had ascended to among the 20 wealthiest individuals in the United States. Stood Peter Widner. His fortune hovered between $50 and $100 million, an immense sum at a time when an average laborer might pull in just $500 annually. He held seats on various company boards. He poured funds into financial institutions, public services, and ventures nationwide. As a key influencer, he possessed the ability to elevate or dismantle enterprises with a single utterance. Yet what truly distinguished Widner from fellow industrial titans was his authentic passion for fine arts and heritage. This wasn't mere pretense or a bid for higher society. Having dropped out of education at age 13, Peter Widner pursued self-improvement. He devoured books relentlessly. He journeyed to Europe time and again, exploring galleries, examining canvases, delving into carvings and ancient relics. He cultivated refined preferences, backed by unlimited resources to pursue them freely. Upon choosing to construct Linwood Hall, his aim extended beyond flaunting riches. He sought to craft a residence befitting the impressive array of artworks he had gathered. In essence, the estate functioned as a gallery that incidentally included sleeping quarters. The ground-level exhibit spaces were tailored to highlight his Rembrandt, his Verrier, and his Renaissance treasures. He yearned to dwell amid elegance and to ensure his offspring and descendants matured, valuing heritage over mere wealth accumulation. His domestic situation appeared idyllic. His spouse, Hannah, proved a reliable and pragmatic partner who oversaw their home adeptly and nurtured their kids effectively. They raised 2 sons to maturity, George and Joseph. Each entered the family enterprise alongside their father, mastering the transportation sector and amassing their own substantial assets. George wed Eleanor Elkins, offspring of another affluent Philadelphia lineage, solidifying the Widners' standing in elite circles. Joseph took as his bride Ella Pan Coast, similarly prominent. The next generation followed, including Harry, Eleanor, and Joseph Jr., suggesting a robust family legacy. Linwood Hall's debut in 1897 found Peter at 63, the zenith of his accomplishments. He commanded riches, influence, an opulent dwelling, a devoted kin, and an artistic trove that institutions coveted. Through sharp intellect and unyielding drive, he had risen from obscurity to join the nation's upper echelon. The youth who once toiled in a meat shop now resided in regal splendor. All appeared flawless, all seemed enduring. And maybe that was Peter Widner's sole genuine error, assuming that triumph once seized could endure indefinitely. For within 15 years, the planet's iciest waters would claim his son and grandson, rendering all the fortune and authority imaginable powerless to intervene. Horace Trumbauer's visionary blueprint, just 27 years of age. Pause to absorb that. The visionary behind one of the nation's grandest residences, a structure to challenge Versailles, was a mere 27 when Peter Widner enlisted him. Horace Trumbauer lacked formal architectural training. It was beyond his means. He began as a sketcher at 16, gaining expertise hands-on, scrutinizing structures much like Peter Widner absorbed artworks, with intense focus, insatiable curiosity, absorbing lessons that peers gleaned from academia. Entering his mid-20s, Trumbauer launched his independent firm in Philadelphia. He crafted several homes for affluent patrons. Solid efforts, proficient, yet unremarkable. Then came Peter Widner's visit to his studio. Envision yourself as Trumbauer, then. A top-tier American magnate selects you, scarcely past your 20s, to conceive his fortress. Not merely a home, but a fortress. Budget holds no constraints. Render it dazzling, ensure its timelessness. Compel Philadelphia to recognize Peter Widner's ascent. Many designers might have faltered under the pressure. Trumbauer dove in. He devoted months to European travels, pencil and pad ready, dissecting iconic French chateaux. Strolling Versailles, gauging symmetries visually, grasping how Gallic experts evoked that aura of majestic scale. He toured Italian villas, British manor houses, Teutonic fortresses. His journals brimmed with sketches, dimensions, intricacies, the arch of a balustrade, the balance of pillars, the play of sunlight across lofty panes. Yet Trumbauer went beyond imitation. He blended influences, adapting premier European motifs to suit an American patron harboring outsized aspirations. The French erected Versailles for a monarch of heavenly mandate. Trumbauer erected for a meat vendor's heir who had battled upward via trolleys and supply deals. Equivalent splendor, altered narrative. His resulting plan embodied neoclassical excellence in vision, the scene. You traverse the extended tree-flanked avenue toward Linwood Hall. The edifice emerges bit by bit. Initially, the silhouette of the roof next the imposing pillars of the entrance porch. At last, the complete three-level frontage, spanning broader than imaginable. 180 feet wide. Indiana limestone, shimmering golden in the midday light, pillars reaching so high that you tilt your head to glimpse their tops. It shuns understatement. It aims to stun. And it succeeds. The foyer by itself could engulf the whole abode of ordinary folks. Marble surfaces gleamed underfoot with intricate geometric designs in black, white, and gold, sourced directly from Italian quarries. Towering walls stretched 2 floors high, adorned with ornate plasterwork and moldings detailed enough to captivate anyone for hours on end. The ceiling overhead boasted elaborate plaster creations, crafted by Italian artisans who had honed their skills over decades. And then there was the staircase, that awe-inspiring, daunting structure hewn from a single block of marble, ascending, branching, and ascending once more, so imposing that stepping down, it evoked the drama of arriving at a monarch's palace. Each space envisioned by Trumbauer fulfilled more than basic habitation. The ballroom transcended simple dancing. It declared that the Widners could host 300 guests with the ease of a casual dinner among pals. The library went beyond book storage, featuring floor-to-ceiling carved mahogany panels, a sliding ladder for the topmost shelves, and leather armchairs arranged to capture sunlight pouring through lofty windows. A haven signaling that this household cherished education, culture, and intellectual pursuits. Multiple art galleries, rather than a single one, were engineered with ideal illumination. North-oriented windows for steady, gentle light, walls draped in silk damask and hues that enhanced the artworks, viewing angles meticulously planned so each gem unveiled itself precisely as visitors progressed through the areas. Even museums drew inspiration from these setups, replicating their layouts. Yet, Trumbauer's genius shone brightest in his grasp that such vastness risked feeling chilly and detached, akin to an uninhabited exhibit hall. Thus, he wove in cozy enclaves amid the splendor, a compact parlor branching from the grand foyer for family coffee chats in the morning, sunlit breakfast nooks gazing onto the gardens, secluded offices where Peter might escape with a novel, a dedicated lounge for Eleanor's needlepoint and reading, bathed in optimal natural light. These weren't showpieces for visitors. They were genuine retreats for daily life, nestled within the opulence. The engineering feats matched the visual splendor. Coal-fired boilers in the basement fueled central heating, advanced enough to regulate temperatures across separate house sections. Electricity illuminated every corner, generated on-site. Telephones linked key areas. 2 elevators served the needs, one for the family, another for staff and goods. In 1897, these were revolutionary advances, blended flawlessly into the neoclassical aesthetic by Trumbauer. Building it spanned 3 years, demanding hundreds of laborers, Italian stonemasons, French plaster experts, specialists in marble polishing, wood sculpting, and handcrafted embellishments beyond mechanical capability. Expenses ballooned, as they invariably do in ventures so bold. Widener remained unfazed. Quote, "Et gros." He instructed Trumbauer. Quote, Karen 1. Upon Linwood Hall's completion in 1897, Horace Trumbauer, at age 30, had forged his crowning achievement. He would later craft numerous estates, museums, and civic structures, rising to prominence among America's top architects, yet none would surpass Linwood. It stood as the zenith, where boundless funds fused with flawless foresight, allowing a prodigious talent unrestricted reign to realize his dreams. The residence was built to endure for a millennium, unyielding limestone, uncracking marble, foundations anchored for immortality. Trumbo had fashioned an edifice meant to rival the Parthenon or Versailles in longevity. He could never have foreseen that within a mere century his triumph would decay, ceilings caving in, marble defaced, panes broken. His strategies for endurance thwarted not by shoddy workmanship, but by misfortune and neglect. That downfall lay far in the future, though. At present, Linwood Hall gleamed pristine and fresh, poised to house the fortunes Peter Widner had amassed over decades, an art trove valued in the millions. Entering Linwood Hall around 1900 meant stepping not merely into a home, but into one of the globe's premier private galleries. To your left in the entryway, a genuine Rembrandt, not a reproduction, commanding a value exceeding a decade's wages for most folks. Opposite, a Vermeer among just 36 canvases from the Dutch virtuoso's lifetime output. Nearby, Van Dyck depictions of elite Europeans, their figures gazing with haughty reserve. A Raphael Madonna, a Donatello carving, pieces by Botticelli, Titian, El Greco, artworks totaling millions, perhaps tens of millions, casually displayed where the Widners encountered them routinely. Peter Widner didn't stum. He dove into the world of art acquisition with the same rigorous approach he'd applied to the streetcar industry, systematic, all-consuming, intent on grasping every nuance. He delved into art history books. He brought on board true specialists, consultants who could spot authentic masterpieces amid sophisticated fakes. He made numerous trips to Europe, exploring exclusive holdings and exhibition spaces, honing his ability to rely on his personal judgment. Above all, though, his wealth allowed him to secure top-tier pieces. Whenever a remarkable canvas appeared at auction, Widner just needed to surpass all other bidders. As European nobility faced financial woes, and plenty did in the late 1800s, forcing them to part with heirlooms, Widner stood ready with ready funds. He approached it without sentimentality. No single artwork was a must-have for him. Instead, he aimed for exemplary creations by the most renowned painters, backed by the means to obtain them. His holdings focused on old masters, artworks spanning the 15th to 17th centuries. This choice stemmed from deliberate reasoning, not elitism. These were the pieces that had proven their worth over centuries, endorsed by curators and academics as truly exceptional. A Rembrandt retained eternal appeal. A Vermeer commanded lasting admiration. For him, art embodied both heritage and financial savvy. Yet Widner truly cherished the canvases for more than their price tags. The highlight of his assortment was Rembrandt's The Mill, an atypical landscape for the artist, depicting a windmill etched boldly against a stormy backdrop. Widner shelled out a then unprecedented sum of $500,000 for it in 1911, roughly $15 million in modern terms, and displayed it prominently in his primary exhibition area, ensuring it caught every guest's eye right away. It symbolized his pinnacle achievement, his bold declaration, his proof that his trove matched Europe's elite. But his pursuits extended beyond paintings. Widner gathered Chinese ceramics from the Ming and Qing eras, vases and vessels crafted for imperial courts. He snapped up Renaissance statues in bronze and marble by famed sculptors. He obtained medieval illuminated codices from monastic libraries, regal French furnishings once owned by monarchs, and castle-woven tapestries. Linwood Hall's every chamber brimmed with items that ordinary folks might encounter only in public institutions. His offspring shared his fervor. George, the elder boy, cultivated his own refined preferences. He amassed diminutive portraits, intricate miniatures capturing European elites, scores of them, each a compact gem. He also hunted down scarce volumes, initial printings, and handwritten documents. The library he built at Linwood could compete with academic repositories. During their regular extended stays in Europe, lasting months, George and his household scoured auction houses and vendors, perpetually seeking, studying, and adding to their holdings. The clan recognized that their assemblage signified far beyond riches. It stood for refinement, knowledge, and enduring inheritance. Peter hoped his descendants would mature amid splendor, realizing that certain values transcended purchase, though, paradoxically, he had indeed procured them. He sought to link the Widener legacy not merely to trolleys and commerce, but to discernment, scholarship, and safeguarding global artistic treasures. Harry's youthful energy, as George's offspring, burned brightest for literature. In his early 20s, he'd curated a stunning array of uncommon tomes, Shakespeare folios, fragments from the Gutenberg Bible, codices that experts coveted. He envisioned gifting it all to Harvard, his college, to establish a namesake archive benefiting researchers indefinitely. The twist, naturally, lay in its sheer excellence, worth, and centralization. Linwood Hall functioned as a residence, absent the fortifications and surveillance of a gallery. Valuables relied solely on sturdy barriers and the notion that no thief would target one of the nation's wealthiest clans. Insurers grew uneasy about insuring such priceless assets. Peter dismissed the worries. It was his dwelling. These were his possessions. They fit here, amid kin, rather than sequestered in institutional strongrooms. By 1912, appraisers pegged the Widener artworks at $5 to $10 million, translating to $150 million to $300 million now, one of America's top half-dozen private troves, on par with those of J.P. Morgan and Henry Clay Frick. Continental institutions approached to acquire select items. Researchers sought permission to analyze specific artifacts. The Widener holdings had earned mythic renown. At 78, Peter had amassed his empire, he'd erected his mansion, he'd stocked it with unparalleled masterpieces. His lineage flourished. Son accomplished, grandkids full of potential. All his labors had borne fruit. That season, George Widener planned a lavish European excursion with his wife Eleanor and boy Harry. They'd tour exhibitions, hunt for collection enhancements, savor Parisian springtime. It promised a familial outing, a CE. In celebration of their achievements and heritage, they secured spots on the grandest and most opulent ocean liner ever constructed. The vessel was named Titanic, and it would strip away all they held dear. The clan that possessed it all. Spring 1912. The Widener family stands at the pinnacle of their influence. Peter, now 78, is easing into retirement yet remains astute, deeply engaged in affairs, and often strolls through his galleries at Linwood, gazing upon his Rembrandt. His spouse, Hannah, after years of wedlock, is intimately familiar with every chamber in their estate, every staff member's identity, and every nuance of managing a residence that demands 60 individuals merely to operate. Their son George, at 50, embodies the ideal heir, a shrewd entrepreneur who has grown the family wealth exponentially. Refined, worldly, at ease in corporate settings and cultural venues. Wed to Eleanor Elkins, intelligent and striking, hailing from one of Philadelphia's premier lineages. As a pair, they've crafted an existence that appears blessed. Then there's Harry, George, and Eleanor's offspring, 27 years of age, a Harvard alumnus, intensely devoted to uncommon volumes with the same relentless drive his grandfather applied to trolleys. Harry has already gathered an assortment that leaves bibliophiles green with jealousy. Initial printings, handwritten documents, priceless gems. He frequently discusses bequeathing the entire lot to Harvard, erecting a repository, forging a lasting legacy. The family journeys like monarchs, for they essentially are the nobility of America. Custom rail cars that function as mobile mansions with sleeping quarters, lounges, eateries, all clad in rich mahogany and equipped with top-tier decor. Upon reaching New York, lavish hotel apartments await them. For voyages to Europe, they reserve the choicest staterooms on the elite vessels. Existence at Linwood unfolds as meticulously orchestrated extravagance. Morning meals presented on porcelain worth more per piece than a laborer's entire wage. Forenoons spent in the study or viewing halls. Midday outings via bespoke horse-drawn vehicles through Philadelphia, evolving to costly motor cars. Nights filled with banquets for 20, 50, or 100 attendees, Philadelphia's elite, commercial partners, esteemed visitors. The help ensures it all runs seamlessly behind the scenes. You awaken to a spotless space, tidied during your slumber. Attire is set ready. Steaming water awaits your tub. Descending the stairs, your repast materializes precisely on cue, tailored to your tastes. The linens washing, the silvers buffing, the blooms placement in each space. None of it crosses your mind. It simply occurs. George and Eleanor's junior offspring, Eleanor Fitz and George Jr., mature within this cocoon of affluence. They've experienced no alternative. The mansion feels ordinary to them. The household aids go unnoticed. The masterpieces adorning the walls, Rembrandt, Vermeer, define their domestic backdrop. They frequent elite academies, benefit from superior instructors, and are destined to wed into other affluent clans sustaining this realm. Yet, wealth cannot procure safeguards against destiny or shields from capricious events. The Wideners have shielded themselves from nearly all hardships, indigence, unease, societal scorn, doubt. They've erected barriers of riches, and they assume, maybe without realizing it, that these fortifications guard against all threats. That season, George resolves on a European excursion for the kin, blending commerce with leisure, investments to oversee, conferences to join, but also delight. Parisian springs, London exhibits, acquisitions of artwork. Harry yearns to explore antiquarian booksellers in London, rumors swirling about a 1598 Francis Bacon volume up for grabs. Eleanor aims to tour Parisian ateliers, procure dresses, savor the social whirl. They arrange return travel aboard the planet's freshest, most sumptuous liner, RMS Titanic. Premier accommodations, of course, the most exquisite parlors, accompanied by their loyal valet, Edwin Keeping, a longtime family fixture. The Atlantic span will span under 7 days. They'd return to Linwood by April's end, resuming their flawless routine. On April 10, 1912, they embark on Titanic from Cherbourg, France. The liner lives up to every accolade, colossal, graceful, extravagantly refined. Their quarters match any premier inn. The saloons eclipse Paris's top eateries. Companions aboard match their stature. John Jacob Astor Forth, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidore, and Ida Strauss. This voyage transcends mere transit. It's a buoyant gala for the nation's upper crust. Harry revels in it. In London, he acquired the Francis Bacon tome, spending lavishly, and now safeguards it devotedly. He's connected with fascinating fellow travelers, fellow enthusiasts, academics, kindred spirits. He and his dad pass hours in the onboard reading room, debating literature, aesthetics, prospects ahead. Perhaps Harry might compile a catalog of his holdings. Perhaps that Harvard library takes shape without delay. Eleanor browses the onboard emporiums, pens notes to stateside acquaintances, relishes the spotlight. Being part of the Widener family carries its own weight. The name opens doors. Folks crave introductions, eager to rub shoulders with that kind of status. It's a heady rush, draining at the same time, yet she's grown accustomed to the rhythm. This is simply her world. George unwinds in a manner he seldom experiences back in Philadelphia. Free from the grind of work and societal demands, he's savoring moments with his spouse and boy. They share meals with Captain Smith, wander the promenade deck, and dream up summer getaways, perhaps Newport or another jaunt to Europe. The days ahead gleam with promise and ease. That evening of April 14th, George and Eleanor throw a gathering in the ship's a la carte dining spot. Exquisite dishes, top-shelf vintages, and chatter that glides effortlessly between guests fluent in the dialect of affluence and status. The Astors join them, along with others. Captain Smith drops by their table for a friendly exchange. The night unfolds flawlessly. Harry slips away before sweets arrive. Fatigue has set in, and he'd rather pore over a book in his quarters. His dad chuckles, teasing him about being such a reader. Eleanor plants a kiss on his cheek. Breakfast tomorrow, they agree. Harry grabs his treasured Francis Bacon edition and retires for the night. The festivities press on. Bubbly keeps pouring. A quip draws that polished, sparkling laughter from Eleanor, honed through countless similar soirees over the years. George glances at his timepiece. Almost 11 o'clock? Time to call it soon, perhaps after one final pour. At 11:40 p.m., the Titanic collides with an iceberg. Revelry doesn't halt right away. A tremor ripples through, accompanied by an odd scraping noise. A voice wonders aloud. Jan quote 2. Yet no sirens wail, no frenzy erupts. After all, the vessel is invincible, or so the headlines proclaimed. The Wideners sip the last of their drinks. Moments later, a steward materializes, striving for composure but laced with haste. Vest on, up to the deck, he instructs, merely a safety step, likely trivial. George and Eleanor exchange glances. Could this be genuine? The liner feels as solid as a fortress, but the steward's gaze betrays otherwise, not a mere exercise. They return to their stateroom to swap into heavier attire and fetch Harry. And in that instant, their idyllic existence, the grandeur, the masterpieces, the staff, the shield of fortune, all dissolves into irrelevance. The vast Atlantic pays no heed to pedigree. It ignores your library of first editions or a Rembrandt secured miles distant. It couldn't care less about your abundance. The sea claims whatever it desires. April 15th, 1912, the evening that shattered everything. The deck buzzes with organized turmoil. Attendants guide crowds to the davits, prioritizing ladies and youngsters, the orchestra shifting from lively tunes to soothing anthems to steady nerves. Eleanor lingers in her formal attire, draped in a hasty fur wrap. Bewildered, this defies belief. The hull lists subtly, yet perceptibly. Icy waves creep upward from below. The staff masks their dread, though it flickers in their expressions. George holds her close. Harry stands nearby, gripping that cursed volume still. Edwin Keeping, their valet, lingers at a distance, at a loss. As elite travelers, they assume priority. There must be a strategy. But the lifeboat shortage dawns painfully. The supposedly indestructible liner holds just 16 plus 4 foldables for over 2,200 souls. A grave oversight. Planners deemed extra vessels an eyesore on the promenade, spoiling the elegance. Style trumped survival. An official materializes beside Eleanor. Madam, into this craft at once. George grasps it first. The protocol brooks no debate. Females and offspring before all. He nudges her forward with care. Quote 3, he urges. Quote 4. Eleanor scans her partner and their son. At 27, Harry counts as adult, ineligible for a seat. George at 50 faces the same bar while any women linger. It's the unspoken honor, the divide between gentlemen and the spineless. I won't abandon you both, she protests. Eleanor insists he must. George's tone hardens. Quote 6. He refers to their Philadelphia brood at Linwood, Eleanor, Fitzeugene, George Jr., yearning for their parent. The man presses, the dinghy fills fast, delay is fatal. Harry advances, offering his prized Francis Bacon tome, the gem that spurred his transatlantic voyage. Quote 7. He bids. Quote 8. Eleanor demurs. Quote 9. Denial clings to her. Reunion seems certain, fodder for tomorrow's tales around the table. George hoists her aboard nearly by force. I adore you, he murmurs, until shortly. The launch descends. Eleanor peers upward at her men poised along the railing, tracking her drop. George forces a grin. Harry signals farewell. They're masking her terror, feigning normalcy in the crisis. It's their final glimpse of them breathing. For George and Harry, the ensuing stretch involves vigil and anticipation. The liner persists. The vessel begins to list. Additional lifeboats are lowered, many departing only partially filled since passengers remain skeptical of the peril. They hesitate to abandon the security of the grand liner for a small craft adrift on the inky sea. The orchestra continues its melody. Gentlemen puff on cigars, feigning composure. Others retreat indoors for a sip of cognac. George and Harry remain topside. They assist fellow ladies into the boats, adhering to the implicit protocol that if fluent males perish prior to indigent females, that status entails duty. John Jacob Astor aids his expectant spouse into a lifeboat, inquiring if he might join her due to her delicate state. The officer denies the request. Astor retreats, ignites a cigarette, joins the cluster of men, and endures. By approximately 2 a.m., the prow submerges beneath the waves. The aft elevates. Folks start slipping across the slanted surface. The incline grows severe, impossible to ignore. The liner is sinking, yet hundreds linger on board. Harry and George remain side by side, parent and offspring. Perhaps they converse about Linwood, the renowned artworks, or the study Harry envisioned constructing. Perhaps silence prevails. Perhaps dialogue feels futile. At 2:20 a.m., Titanic fractures amidships. The illumination fades. The rear portion, where George and Harry position themselves, ascends perpendicularly, reaching 90 degrees toward the heavens. Briefly, astonishingly, it appears suspended. Then it descends. The sea temperature stands at 28 degrees. Immersion in such frigid depths doesn't lead to drowning. Instead, hypothermic shock claims lives within moments. Limbs stiffen. The pulse ceases. It's swift, in its manner at least compassionate. Edwin Keeping, their valet, perishes alongside them. He remained loyal to his masters until the conclusion. 2 miles distant, Eleanor occupies lifeboat number 4, observing the vessel's glow vanish. She endures the noises, predominantly cries, that will torment her eternally. Shrouded in a shawl, trembling, she's amid other wives witnessing their spouse's demise. A voice murmurs, quote 12. The boats stay away. Fear of overwhelming crowds from frantic swimmers keeps them at bay. Thus they propel toward the shadows, away from the whales, anticipating sunrise. As Carpathia reaches the scene at first light and gathers the rescued, Eleanor is hoisted onto the deck. Warm tea is offered. A compassionate lady provides fresh garments. She lingers near the railing, scanning for additional boats, for signs of her spouse and child. They never appear. They've already settled on the ocean floor, 2.5 miles below, joined by 1,500 souls, by Harry's cherished Francis Bacon volume tucked in his jacket, by it all. Eleanor absorbs the grim reality gradually. The manifests list the verified fatalities. George Widener, Harry Widener, Edwin Keeping, all departed. In Philadelphia at Linwood Hall, Peter Widener gets the wire. His boy, his descendant, both lost. At 78, he's outlasted every corporate clash, reversal, trial. Yet this strikes deepest. Wealth proved powerless. The estate offered no shield. The Rembrandts, Vermeers, and antique volumes, worthless now. Eleanor endures, though endurance tastes like torment. She must journey back to Philadelphia, to Linwood, to confront her in-law and offspring, to account for her survival amid their absence. How she boarded the boat, how she departed without them. The mansion awaits. 110 chambers, 60 staff, corridors brimming with invaluable masterpieces, all impeccably preserved, flawlessly elegant, hollow. A bereaved woman's sorrow echoing through 110 vacant spaces. Eleanor returns home 3 weeks post-Titanic. The locomotive from New York arrives in Philadelphia. Her remaining kids await, Eleanor Jr., Fitz-Eugene Jr. They gaze at her with inquiries too daunting to voice. Where is Papa? Where is Harry? The truth is evident. The entire world knows. Publications have brimmed with the saga for weeks, yet beholding their mom solitary, advancing unaccompanied without her partner and eldest boy, renders it tangible beyond any print. The ride to Elkins Park passes through the entrance, along that extended foliage-flanked driveway. Linwood Hall emerges, imposing and unaltered. The stone facade shimmers in the vernal light. The grounds remain meticulously tended. Nothing's shifted, yet all is transformed. Peter Widener greets her at the threshold. He seems a decade older in just 3 weeks. His progeny, his lineage, his successor, and successor's successor vanished. He clasps Eleanor, and 2 souls stripped bare seek solace in utterances that evade them. Within, the household staff has arranged matters flawlessly. Eleanor's quarters await. Bouquets grace each vessel, her preferred brew at hand. They strive to uphold routine, but how does one sustain normalcy when half the kin rests on the Atlantic seabed? Eleanor drifts through the residence like a specter. Each space evokes recollections. The morning parlor where Harry pored over texts at breakfast, oblivious to his cooling plate. The study where George savored post-meal smokes. The exhibit hall where the family gathered, admiring the Rembrandt, debating aesthetics. Now, Eleanor lingers there solo. The staff. They're unsure how to proceed. Do they give her space, or linger close by in case she requires aid? Do they bring up George and Harry, or act as if the tragedy never occurred? They opt for quiet, which seems off yet preferable to uttering words. Peter attempts to immerse himself in work, hoping to lose his sorrow in the demands of commerce, but his spirit refuses to engage. Why bother? He'd erected a vast enterprise meant for his son's inheritance. Now only Joseph, his junior boy, endures. Joseph is competent, no doubt, yet George grasped Peter's dreams, mirroring his zeal for artistry and heritage. George had been destined to take over Linwood, nurturing his offspring there to perpetuate the lineage. The artworks taunt them. Those Rembrandts and Vermeers gathered across years, each selected with precision. They amount to mere objects now, stunning, priceless objects that failed to preserve a single life. Peter ceases his tours of the galleries, averting his gaze from the canvases. Why continue? Eleanor strives to uphold daily rituals for her surviving offspring. Meals at 8 in the morning, sessions with instructors, evening suppers as a group, yet the grand dining area, once accommodating 50, now accommodates just 5 amid space designed for throngs. And the hush is oppressive. They attempt discussions on mundane topics, studies, the climate, upcoming arrangements, but each exchange inevitably returns to the void. In the evenings, Eleanor reclines in her chamber, the very one she occupied with George for so long, attuned to the estate's creaks and sighs. 110 chambers, yet solitude engulfs her like never before. The staff is present, of course, gliding soundlessly along corridors, upholding the order. But they fade into the background, schooled in unobtrusiveness. She's left with recollections and remorse. For Eleanor endured. She boarded the lifeboat. She followed George's directive to depart. She abandoned them. True, alternatives didn't exist. Indeed, the protocol prioritized women and children. Indeed, George urged her onward, but she lived on, and reason fails to soothe self-reproach. Time drags on. Legal entanglements proliferate, testaments, properties, corporate choices. Peter, at his advanced age and overwhelmed by loss, can't manage it all. Joseph rises to the occasion, assuming greater control of the familial ventures. Yet echoes persist. Demands from Titanic survivors' kin, commemorations, press reports. The Widener surname dominates headlines, not for commercial triumphs or cultural purchases, but as symbols of sorrow, casualties of the disaster. Eleanor resolves on a course. Harry had envisioned gifting his volumes to Harvard, aspiring to erect a repository of knowledge. He'll never realize it, but she might. She'll construct the archive he envisioned, stocking it with his tomes, etching his legacy indelibly. The Harry Elkins Widener Memorial Library, a tribute to her boy. It offers her a diversion from anguish. She collaborates with Harvard officials and designers, channeling funds and vigor into forging a splendid, enduring edifice. The library shall be enormous, destined to shelter millions of volumes in time. Harry's assemblage will form its core. Coming generations of researchers will draw upon it. Her child will endure in memory not solely as a Titanic casualty, but as a patron of intellect, an enthusiast of wisdom. Peter endorses it. He recognizes the drive to forge permanence amid fragility. Still, he realizes no archive will alleviate the torment. Nothing can. At 78, he's surpassed his own son in lifespan. The sequence is inverted. Mothers and fathers shouldn't enter their young. Linwood Hall persists in operation out of necessity. The household keeps it pristine. The landscapes receive care. The masterpieces get polished, but the efforts feel rote, devoid of the vitality that once elevated it beyond opulence. Lavish soirees cease, social affairs terminate. Who would orchestrate festivities in a dwelling steeped in bereavement? Peter's vitality wanes. He still traverses the estate, still occupies his study, but the energy has evaporated. In 1915, 3 years post-Titanic, he passes. Not due to any particular ailment, merely the toll of years and shattered spirit. He'd amassed a fortune, adorned a mansion with rarities, established a bloodline, only to depart aware that his meticulously shaped heritage faced dissolution. Eleanor stays on at Linwood alongside her kids and Peter's spouse, Hannah, but it's mere endurance, not true existence. The residence looms overly vast, brimming with specters. Each space murmurs echoes of absent men. Joseph claims the lion's share of Peter's holdings. He's affluent, undoubtedly equipped to sustain Linwood, yet he possesses his separate home, his private kin. Linwood had been earmarked for George, not him. Now it weighs like an encumbrance, costly, unfeasible, shadowed by phantoms. The art holdings start to disperse. Certain items head to galleries, contributed, auctioned, bestowed. Peter had envisioned them unified, showcased at Linwood eternally. But why persist? Preferable that admirers behold these gems rather than let them languish unseen in a forsaken grandeur. Eleanor weds again in time to a Harvard academic, a figure utterly detached from the extravagance of the Gilded Age. They dwell modestly, serenely. She avoids Linwood save for required kin gatherings, excessive recollections, excessive suffering. World War I arrives, bringing with it profound societal shifts. The Gilded Age has unquestionably come to an end. Taxes on estates render the upkeep of grand estates like Linwood a heavy financial burden. Domestic help grows rarer as individuals pursue superior prospects in manufacturing plants and corporate settings. The entire framework that upheld these opulent residences, inexpensive workforce, untaxed fortunes, and societal tolerance for vast disparities, fades away. Linwood Hall endures, yet it fades gradually, almost unnoticed, though unmistakably waning. Chambers are sealed off, personnel dwindle, the once pristine grounds shift to basic care. No one resides there permanently any longer. It remains a familial asset under legal ownership with sporadic visits, but devoid of affection or daily habitation. Absent vitality, even the most majestic manor reduces to mere architecture. Stone, marble, and stucco, stunning, assuredly of historical merit, and monetarily worthwhile, yet hollow in dimensions unrelated to physical occupancy. The Widener clan possesses alternative residences and pursuits. Linwood evolves into the inheritance they receive, the obligation they bear, the dilemma they struggle to resolve, far too costly to sustain, yet too vital to relinquish, so it persists like an exquisite relic, awaiting judgment on its destiny, the gradual demise of a lineage. By 1930, Linwood Hall emerges as a lavish relic from another time. Consider the transformations in America. The exuberant 1920s ushered in jazz-filled speakeasies, flapper culture, and a total dismissal of Victorian rigidity. Then, the Great Depression strikes, rendering lavish estates appear utterly extravagant. Citizens queue for bread while the Widener family controls a 110-room dwelling. Such optics prove unfavorable. Joseph Widener, the enduring son of Peter, confronts a pivotal decision: retain Linwood and drain funds on its preservation, or release it. He opts for a compromise. Sustain it at a minimal level, house the clan's premier artworks within, but forego full-time occupancy. It transforms into an exorbitantly priced repository for treasures. The workforce contracts to a bare minimum, perhaps 15 staff members compared to the prior 60. Entire sections shut down. Protective cloths drape over furnishings. The heating operates solely in sporadically utilized areas. The landscapes, formerly tended by a dozen horticulturists, now manage with 2 or 3. They retain their allure, though untamed fringes encroach. The natural world ignores boundaries of ownership, yet the artworks endure in splendor. Joseph has acquired his father's and siblings' assemblages. Linwood continues to shelter some of the premier old masters in private possession: Rembrandt, Vermeer, Raphael, pieces valued at millions, even amid Depression-era currency. Institutions frequently approach for acquisition opportunities. Joseph consistently declines. This constitutes ancestral legacy, not commodities for sale. However, ensuring the artwork's integrity demands environmental regulation, protection, and restoration, all costly, all essential. Joseph funds them out of necessity, though annually the rationale weakens. Why store irreplaceable masterpieces in an uninhabited residence? Why not contribute them to galleries where multitudes could admire them under expert stewardship with fiscal advantages for the donors? In 1937, Joseph reaches a resolution. The paramount items, the Rembrandt, the Vermeer, the collection's gems, head to the National Gallery of Art in Washington. The venue, constructed by Andrew Mellon with the aim of establishing America's premier public art institution, receives Joseph's gift as its centerpiece. The Widener holdings claim a dedicated wing, exhibited fittingly, conserved expertly, accessible to the masses instead of decaying in a secluded estate. It proves a sound choice, a pragmatic one, yet also a concession. The aspiration has concluded. Peter's ideal of a generational domain safeguarding heritage has crumbled. The artworks persist, but beyond Linwood's walls, not alongside the Wideners. The manor grows more desolate. Devoid of the collection to validate its purpose, it amounts to mere spaces, lavish, elegant, of profound historical import, but spaces all the same. Joseph's offspring show no desire to dwell there. Raised in a transformed epoch with altered principles, they view a suburban fortress as uninviting. It represents an encumbrance. World War II delivers yet another setback. Authorities demand materials. Inheritance levies surge sharply. Manpower proves elusive. The populace toils in industrial roles or serves abroad. Preserving Linwood amid conflict appears disloyal, profligate. The clan secures additional sections, trims the team even more. The estate withdraws, anticipating improved circumstances that fail to materialize. Joseph passes in 1943. His heirs assume Linwood, though none aspire to inhabit it. It looms overly vast, overly burdensome, too linked to an obsolete period they scarcely recall fondly. They grapple with the query Joseph once did. Preserve it or surrender it. They cling to it tenuously. Juridical hurdles complicate divestment. Encumbered by trusts, historical protections, and regulatory barriers, they nonetheless neglect adequate care. That demands fortunes. They refuse to invest in an unwanted property. By 1950, Linwood Hall stands virtually forsaken, nominally possessed, superficially tended, scarcely so. Yet the place stands vacant. No residents occupy its rooms. No footsteps echo along those polished marble corridors. No eyes gaze upon the surviving artworks or furnishings. The staff has long vanished. The once manicured gardens now overrun with untamed growth. Panes begin to shatter, left unrepaired. The rooftop springs leaks that go unpatched. Trespassers eventually find it. Linwood lies deserted, remote, vulnerable to intrusion. They shatter glass, scrawl graffiti across surfaces, pilfer whatever can be carried off. The grand marble stairway, too massive to haul away, falls victim to desecration. Elaborate molded ceilings suffer intentional ruin. This isn't driven by desperation. It's sheer malice, the kind of chaos that forsaken structures often provoke. Community heritage advocates raise urgent warnings. This represents Horace Trumpower's crowning achievement. It holds profound historical value. The design, the artistry, irreplaceable. They rally supporters, launch campaigns, urge the Widner heirs to gift the estate for safeguarding. The family declines, or rather, they explain its intricate involvements with estates, fiscal burdens, risk issues, perhaps in the future, but not presently. The advocates attempt to gather funds for purchase. It's impossible. Millions would be needed merely to shore up the structure, dozens of millions for full revival. No one possesses such resources for a suburban residence. Years drag on. Through the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. Linwood endures its gradual downfall. Portions of the roof give way. Torrents of water cascade inside. Decaying woodwork ravages overhead panels. The intricate ceiling motifs, laboriously shaped by Italian artisans over months, disintegrate and tumble down, marble fissures under repeated freezing and thawing. The durable limestone exterior, meant to endure for centuries, erodes and discolors. Photographers stumble upon it. City adventurers sneak inside, capture the deterioration, share images across the web. The visuals are eerie. Majestic chambers cluttered with debris, decorative elements marred by tags, that splendid stairway ascending to ruined levels above. It gains notoriety once more, though for tragic causes, not as an emblem of triumph, but as a relic of collapse. The disparity stings. Contrast images from 1900, immaculate and vibrant with treasures and vitality, against those from 2000, identical edifice, transformed beyond recognition, beauty supplanted by ruin, nurture replaced by disregard, vitality yielding to demise. Amid this, the Widner lineage clings to title deeds, refusing upkeep or sale, ensnared by their hesitation, as Trumpower's legacy festers. Forsaken. 7 decades of erosion. Gaze at Linwood Hall from the perimeter now, and it resembles a site of wrongdoing. Not a swift killing, but a lingering demise, and demise through oversight, unfolding openly for 70 years. As onlookers observe without intervening, the entrance barriers hang locked with chains. Corrosion devours the once shining wrought iron embellishments. Past them, the driveway fractures. Vegetation thrusts upward through pavement. Formerly pruned trees sprawl unchecked, obscuring the manor. One must part foliage just to glimpse it. And there it looms. The stone frontage, crafted to shimmer warmly under the sun, now dulled by layers of filth and organic buildup. Glass is broken, not merely some, but countless panes, certain ones patched with decaying boards, others yawn empty like gaps in a smile, inviting elements and wildlife into shadowed spaces. The rooftop, my word. Vast areas have caved entirely. From afar, you peer into the interior. Blue sky visible where solid coverings once spanned. Storms and flurries have funneled through breaches for generations, wrecking all beneath. Those masterful ceiling ornaments, etched by skilled Italians in painstaking detail, eroded by moisture, now scattered as wreckage across warped boards. City foragers slip in often. They upload pictures and clips to the internet, chronicling the breakdown with vivid precision. Traversing Linwood Hall in 2024 feels like navigating a cadaver. Each space narrates a tale of splendor lost. The foyer, formerly so imposing it awed guests. Its stone tiling lies fractured and soiled. The panels, once draped in luxurious woven silk, display only tattered scraps. Scribbles deface all areas. Not creative marks, but mere scrawls, curses, the thoughtless defilement from those armed with cans and contempt for the past. That stairway, the opulent stone flight that demanded vast sums and was hewn from one immense block. It endures intact at its core. Stone resists decay, yet it's plastered with writings, scarred and fractured where intruders aim to harm it. The railings, finely sculpted from marble, lie shattered, taken, or wrecked. What experts forged in endless hours, fools demolished in moments. The dance chamber lies in shambles. Parts of the base have sunk into the lower level. The overhead, adorned formerly with ornate molding and hanging lights, has crashed down in chunks, piling rubble high. All openings lack panes. Foul perch in the heights. Downpours seep steadily, fostering a constant moisture reeking of decay and fungus. The display areas, those chambers tailored to showcase pieces by Rembrandt. The interiors of Linwood Hall in El Mirasol stand as hollow remnants. The luxurious silk panels that once adorned the walls have vanished, decayed by time or pilfered by thieves. The exquisite illumination scheme crafted by Trumbo holds no purpose anymore. Power is absent, artwork depleted, leaving only scarred surfaces and shattered overhead windows that allow brutal daylight and downpours to invade. The library, a spot where George and Harry Widener once chatted about priceless volumes and upcoming ventures, might be the most heartbreaking space. Its intricate mahogany bookcases endure, yet they're ruined by moisture and covered in fungus. The volumes have disappeared years ago, given away, auctioned off, or dispersed. Silence reverberates through the chamber. It's easy to imagine echoes of past dialogues, strategies devised, and aspirations shattered on that fateful April evening in 1912. Down in the lower levels, the staff dormitories and engine rooms lie submerged. The cellar inundates with each storm. The sophisticated heating apparatus, revolutionary when installed in 1897, now rusts as worthless debris. The cooking areas have been gutted of valuables. Brass tubing, hardware, any marketable item has been torn away by looters. In the grounds, the manicured landscapes have turned wild and overgrown. Trails vanish beneath layers of fallen foliage accumulated over generations. Water features lie in ruins, clogged with foul pools and debris. Statues bear marks of destruction or outright theft. The stable building, an impressive structure in its own right, has crumbled in sections. Employee lodgings are mere wreckage. Conservation organizations have made repeated attempts. Efforts were mounted. During the 1990s, a dedicated campaign pushed to include Linwood Hall on the National Register of Historic Places, aiming for official safeguards and restoration grants. It achieved limited success. The property earned the designation, yet that offers no funds for repairs. It merely complicates any teardown. Over the decades, several real estate firms have eyed Linwood. Could it transform into apartments, lodging, or an exhibit hall? The economics always fall short. The structure suffers too much deterioration. Fixing it up might run $50 million or possibly $100 million, and to what end? Its spot doesn't support viable business. The outskirts of Philadelphia crave residences, shops, and workspaces, not a revived opulent estate from the Gilded Age. In 2012, marking precisely a century since the Titanic disaster, a Heritage Society hosted a conference on Linwood. Designers, scholars, and advocates convened to explore possibilities. They inspected the site cautiously, given its unstable framework. Decks might give way. Overheads could tumble. Safety is non-existent. Their verdict echoed the obvious truth. Linwood Hall defies rescue. Not utterly unfeasible, boundless funds could achieve wonders, but in practical terms beyond redemption. It demands a tycoon obsessed with opulent-era design, indifferent to profits. Such individuals do appear, though they prefer intact estates in prime settings. The Widener lineage, via assorted foundations and corporations, retains title, but they're stuck. Restoration demands funds they lack. Sure, they're affluent, but not with billions in ready capital to invest in a money-losing project. Selling proves tricky. What buyer wants a wreck burdened by enormous rehab expenses? Demolition faces barriers too. The heritage status hinders it, and even razing would cost millions. Thus, it lingers in gradual decline as attorneys and overseers oversee it remotely, covering bare-bones levies and wishing for a future fix. Locals despise it. An ugly blight, a hazard, a possible peril. Youths sneak past barriers and warnings. Injury could spark litigation. The community group has begged for action, upkeep, teardown, whatever. Stalemate persists. Officials have mulled eminent domain over unpaid dues or infractions. But then what? They shun possessing a dilapidated manor. That shifts the burden and bills to the public, preferable to leave the Wideners holding the title and risks. Hence, Linwood Hall endures in limbo. Too vital to erase, too wrecked to revive, too costly to sustain, too tangled in red tape to settle. It crumbles steadily, month after month, year upon year, era after era. Elements, mischief makers, and decay advancing relentlessly. Explorers adore it. Linwood has gained notoriety among those who seek out forsaken sites. It features in publications on deserted locales and online clips of derelict wonders. This emblem of triumph now embodies defeat. A fortress meant to defy time barely survived 100 years. And deep in the ocean, over 2 miles below the surface, George and Harry Widener rest in obscurity. Unaware that the grand residence their kin erected with such triumph would evolve into America's premier abandoned landmark. Unaware that the Titanic's tragedy wouldn't merely claim their lives, it would doom their legacy too, albeit at a languid pace. The estate no one can redeem. What renders Linwood Hall's tale especially poignant is its avoidability. Contrast it with Biltmore. Comparable scale, comparable period, comparable grandeur. But B. Biltmore continues to flourish as a family-held estate, meticulously cared for and drawing more than 1 million visitors each year. The reason lies in the Vanderbilt clan's adaptability following George's passing. They welcomed the public inside, establishing income sources and managing it like an enterprise rather than merely a heritage site. The Widener clan, however, either failed or refused to follow suit. Post-Titanic disaster and after Peter's demise, envisioning their ancestral residence, the very spot where George and Harry resided, as a public draw seemed profane, vulgar, and profit-driven. Instead, they opted for exclusive possession, sparse utilization, and gradual neglect. When they finally pondered a shift in approach, the opportunity had vanished. The mansion had decayed beyond repair. The surrounding area had transformed irrevocably. Launching Linwood for sightseers in 1950 could have succeeded. Attempting it in 1990 proved futile. Little remained worth displaying. Geography plays a crucial role as well. Biltmore sprawls across thousands of acres amid the mountains, forming its own allure. Linwood, by contrast, nestles in a Philadelphia suburb amid housing districts. Transforming it into a vacation retreat isn't feasible. Adding vineyards or dining spots on the property? Out of the question. It's hemmed in by contemporary sprawl. In 2023, billionaire Richard Yun acquired Linwood Hall. At last, observers hoped, a figure with ample funds who could revive it. Yun unveiled intentions for a multifaceted project. The structure would undergo revival as an exhibit hall and venue for gatherings. Fresh constructions would emerge for housing and business purposes. Conservation advocates expressed guarded hope, yet the obstacles loom large. The edifice demands a total overhaul. Fresh roofing, updated panes, foundational bolstering. The stucco requires full renewal. The stonework calls for scouring and mending, wiring, pipes, climate control, all must be installed anew. Every mechanism ceased functioning long ago. This amounts to reconstructing the insides while preserving the outer facade. Projections for expenses hover between $50 million and exceeding $100 million, and that's solely for revival, excluding adaptations for practical purposes, excluding fees for land use approvals and licenses, excluding perpetual upkeep post-revitalization. The residents devoured funds in 1900 during its prime. In 2025, as a revival endeavor, it will demand exponentially greater sums. Might Yun succeed? Possibly. He possesses means and it seems sincere enthusiasm for the undertaking. Yet annals brim with bold revival schemes that crumbled upon encountering fiscal limits. When expenditures escalated, when backers wavered, when economic tides shifted. Supposing Linwood achieves revival, what form will it take? Not the familial sanctuary of culture that Peter Widener envisioned. That's unattainable today. It will emerge as a revenue-focused entity. Venue for events, exhibit space, perhaps apartments in the higher levels, anything to offset the outlay, which is sensible, realistic, yet it underscores the utter collapse of the initial vision. And consider this profound inquiry. Ought we preserve it? Affirmative. Horace Trumbauer was an architectural genius. Affirmative. The artisanal quality was unparalleled. Affirmative. Its historical import is undeniable. However, the United States possesses finite funds for safeguarding heritage. Each dollar poured into Linwood diverts from other landmarks, other deserving efforts. Does this dilapidated site merit $100 million when those resources could rehabilitate 10 modest, less ravaged historical sites? Advocates for preservation insist yes. Linwood stands alone, beyond substitution, a pinnacle of design. Realists counter no. It's deteriorated excessively, costs too dearly, a futile endeavor. Each perspective holds merit. No definitive resolution exists. What remains undeniable is that Linwood Hall embodies more than a single structure. It signifies how swiftly triumph morphs into calamity, how affluence offers no shield from destiny, how the most lavish designs can disintegrate. Peter Widener constructed for timelessness. He secured scarcely 100 years before his grand estate devolved into decay. The Gilded Age spawned countless colossal residences. The majority have vanished, razed due to escalating costs, repurposed or, akin to Linwood, quietly eroding. The rare survivors, such as Biltmore, stand as anomalies affirming the norm. These abodes proved untenable. They depended on a particular financial order, inexpensive workforce, untaxed fortunes, tolerance for stark disparities that have evaporated. Linwood Hall serves as America's overlooked Versailles. Not due to obscurity, anyone can search it online, view the images, but because collectively, we've elected to overlook its implications. The extravagance, the disparities, the conviction that riches could buffer against misfortune. These estates now provoke unease, disquiet over the narratives they weave about our past. Yet, value resides in recollection, in grasping that Peter Widener was no caricature of evil. He rose from humble origins, cherished aesthetics and refinement, erected a splendor, only for his lineage to shatter amid unforeseen catastrophe. In appreciating that Linwood Hall arose from authentic skill and creativity that eludes us in the present day. In conceding that permitting that decay symbolizes a form of cultural self-destruction, erasing our past simply because it stirs unease. Pause beyond those corroded entrance barriers now. Gaze upon the dilapidated mansion amid the encroaching foliage. Realize you're witnessing far beyond shattered panes and crumbling ceilings. This is the conclusion of a chapter, the demise of an aspiration, the tangible proof of how swiftly prosperity can crumble. Peter Widner constructed Linwood Hall with the intention of enduring for a millennium. It scarcely survived a century. George and Harry perished in a single horrific evening. Their estate faded gradually across years as observers bore witness. Certain remnants evoke romance, medieval fortresses, Roman waterways, sites where ages have mellowed sorrow into elegance. Linwood Hall defies that charm. It's far too modern, too visceral. The echoes of its original grandeur remain visible, amplifying the sorrow of its current state. Here lies the sorrowful conclusion. No blaze or wrecking crew, no theatrical close, merely relentless, inexorable deterioration. The United States overlooked Versailles, crumbling away in the outskirts, awaiting a rescuer or the clock to complete the devastation initiated by misfortune more than 100 years back. The sorrowful conclusion. The United States overlooked Versailles,